It's the Blue Jays this week vodcast. Ben Ennis and Arden Zwelling from Sportsnet Magazine. Good to have you with us, Arden, and let's get right into it. The Blue Jays, obviously, it's been a disaster of a season, continues to get worse because they're playing the Yankees. Blue Jays now 1-10 against the Yankees as we are recording this, so it's possible it could get worse from there, but 1-10 against a team within your division. You play 19 times a season. And just when you think the team might be getting some momentum, you know, they take a 4-0 lead in game one of that doubleheader, blow that one, blow a lead in the second game as well. Just seems like the Yankees have the Blue Jays' number all season long.
It's who's beating them too, and when you look at Jason Nix is hitting walk-offs, right? You know, it's not exactly like the Robinson Canoes of the world that are beating them. It's the 7, 8, and 9 hitters. If you take out the Yankees and the Blue Jays records against each other, the two teams have really similar records.
Yeah.
They're almost even actually. So that's kind of, you know, a tale of how different, you know, the different way two seasons can go.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Yankees now all of a sudden are kind of in the thick of things when it comes to the playoffs, just 5.5 games back of the second wild card as we're talking about this. All right, so the Blue Jays, we talked about just how much of a disaster it's been, not just against the Yankees, but against most of the American League and the National League as well. But the injuries are starting to catch up to this Blue Jays team. Jose Bautista goes on the DL. He's out, so they call up Moises Sierra. You got Meiser Asturis, a little banged up, not quite on the DL as of yet. Jose Reyes, we know the injury problems he's been dealing with. I guess now we're going to get a chance to see some of the younger players. That whole outfield is brand new faces from what we saw at the beginning of the season.
You've lost your entire starting outfield to injury. And if you coming into this season, if you had said you were going to have Anthony Gose taking regular at-bats, Moises Sierra, Munenori Kawasaki, I mean, something's gone horribly wrong, terribly wrong if this is what's happening, considering the roster that they came into the year with. So, I mean, just right now, I mean, everything that can go wrong kind of is. When you look at how they were, you know, how they lost games earlier in the year through poor starting pitching and poor performances while the bullpen was being good. Now the bullpen's letting them down while they are getting some decent starts.
Yeah, it's really been ridiculous because you look at that bullpen, how good it was first half of the season, maybe just a little overworked. But we talked about that revamped outfield right now, and it's a bunch of young guys. It's Kevin Pillar, who's making his major league debut, his first go-around, finally got his first hit out of the way. I'm sure that was a weight off his shoulders. He's interesting, but I want to talk about Anthony Gose because obviously he's a huge, highly touted prospect, and he was involved in the Roy Halladay trade, and we know he has speed to burn. But at a certain point, he's got to hit. He's having a terrible season in AAA with the Buffalo Bisons. We know he just needs to make contact. He's going to beat out his fair share of infield singles, but he strikes out a ton. At what point do the Blue Jays realize, geez, you know what, he's never going to be a starting outfielder, and maybe the best we've got here is a fourth outfielder, bench-type guy?
He can't steal first base, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I talked to Anthony Gose 2 years ago when the Blue Jays were developing him. The Jays took the bunt away from him for an entire year. They told him don't bunt because they thought they had power in his bat, and they thought they could kind of unlock some of that untapped power. So they wanted him swinging for the fences and kind of drive into the power alleys, and that didn't work out. So they brought the bunt back and tried to make him more of a slap hitter. He got kind of messed up there. He came up earlier this year, went down, was unhappy about it because he was hitting 300 in the majors, and he thought I shouldn't be down in Buffalo right now. I should be up there. I'm doing well. He kind of got domed about that a bit, and you know, struggled at the plate again, and now he's back, and we're kind of seeing the same thing. This is a guy who's had almost 3,000 plate appearances as a professional baseball player.
At a certain point, that's a pretty large sample size, isn't it?
That's a huge sample size. He's still incredibly young, but he's had so much experience and so much development that it's, you know, eventually something has to give.
Yeah, well, something is starting to give for Brett Lawrie. He has really turned it around recently, and he's the subject of our Ford Leaders in the Field segment.
Ford Leaders in the Field. Presented by the 2013 Ford F-150, Canada's Player of the Year for 47 years running.
Yeah, Brett Lawrie, when it looked like maybe he wasn't going to be as good as we thought he was when he broke into the major leagues and had a great series in Baltimore, hit his first home run, looked like he was going to be an all-star. Beginning of this season, banged up, didn't get off to a very good start at all, but you look at August, something has clicked for him. He's hitting over 400 in August as we're speaking right now. He's hitting for power, not necessarily hitting home runs. He's hit a few of those, but using the opposite field as well and playing outstanding defense as well.
Absolutely. I believe Brett Lawrie is an elite player. I mean, I believe this is a guy who can be a top 10, maybe even top 5 third baseman in the major leagues. This year's been so weird for him. He's started and stopped so many times. He didn't really have a spring training. He got hurt. He went to the WBC and he didn't play there. He had to shut it down. He got started up again. Then he got hurt again on the slide at the ankle. So it's been so start and stop. Now you're kind of seeing him kind of find a groove, kind of find where he wants to be at the plate. He's kind of settled down a bit at the plate too, which has been a lot. There's been so many moving pieces in his swing. I mean, he looked like he was jumping out of his shoes a lot of the time when he was at the plate, and he settled that down. And now you're seeing him find some consistency. And I mean, I believe it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, and apparently hitting coach Chad Mottola has a lot to do with that. And I'm not done talking about Brett Lawrie. I want to talk about the defense for a second. Because remember, it wasn't that long ago the Blue Jays thought of Brett Lawrie as maybe being their second baseman of the future. But why would you take him away from third base the way he has just picked it? An outstanding play, I think it was on Alfonso Soriano in the second game of that doubleheader, just coming in and almost laying out with the bare hand as well. He's been ridiculous defensively at third base.
Yeah, people get really upset that the Blue Jays made that move. I get
upset.
We all do, but I think that they got to their wits' end at second base. They said, we can't find a solution here. Let's see if maybe this can be a solution. It's a lot easier to find a free agent or a trade for a third baseman than it is for a second baseman. So they kind of wanted to see, maybe let's see if we can do something here with Brett Lawrie. But I mean, I think you're absolutely right that he's an elite defender at third base, one of the best, in the majors. I would say some of the plays he makes are absolutely ridiculous. He's a very, very athletic guy in great shape. So I don't know, that there's going to be a future there at second base for Brett Lawrie, but it's an option.
Yeah, and apparently athletic enough. You can play anywhere, even center field. But before we let you go, Arden, I want to talk about John Farrell, because I know you're working on a piece, actually just finished it, for the magazine, and we're just getting some details about John Farrell speaking at a conference in Boston last week and talking about the Blue Jays' organizational philosophies and the way they choose players, and the way Alex Anthopoulos in particular chooses players. Just goes with the skill set, doesn't think too much about the personality, about the mental makeup, about building a clubhouse as well, whereas in Boston, maybe they've done that, and the results are starting to show themselves this season, where you go back to last year with the chicken and beer scenario. They've done a complete 180, and it seemed to have worked out. What do you make of all that?
I mean, I think John Farrell felt like he was on a bit of an island in Toronto. I mean, he didn't really mesh organizationally with the Blue Jays' thoughts. They're a very scouting-heavy team. Very, we're looking for tools. We're not so much looking at makeup. We're looking at what this guy can do physically, what attributes he has. If he's not a character guy, we can worry about that later and try to adjust that later. John Farrell, values character guys. He values the Shane Victorinos and the Johnny Gomeses of this world, and those are kind of the guys that he wants on his team. And just being around him with the Red Sox, you notice that he's around the team a lot more. He's building a lot more of a rapport with the players. He's really kind of trying to mesh and gel and have his players' backs a lot more. And I think he feels a lot more comfortable there than he did here. And the results speak for themselves. I don't know how much of an effect a manager can have on wins and losses, beyond filling out the lineup card and managing the bullpen.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right? But beside those two things, there's not that much. You can't hit and you can't pitch, and those are pretty important things to winning baseball games. But I think that he's found a lot more of a comfort zone in Boston, and I think that's helped him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Blue Jays do next season with their clubhouse chemistry as well. Great stuff, Arden. You can follow Arden on Twitter, at Arden Zwelling. Follow me on Twitter as well, at BennisSNet. Follow Mike Wilner, at Wilderness590. We'll see you next week.